Thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking out the time to stop by and come on the platform.
Excellent. Where are you in Africa? It's a big place.
I'm currently in Madagascar.
Wow. What are you doing in Madagascar?
I'm just visiting. Actually, I've been to about 20 African countries. So what I'm trying to do is find the right fit for me. I plan to live in Africa. That's my goal ultimately.
Yeah, I've traveled. I can't remember how many countries I've been to, but I've been to a bunch. It's just maybe like 20, like over the years. Um, but I haven't been to Madagascar but mainly in Central Africa, and I spent a lot of time in Zaire when it was Zaire, the Congo, and CAR, and Kenya and Uganda around there.
Wow, that's real cool. Now I can ask you, what was your experience? When you went to these different places.
I loved it. I thought it was amazing. I thought it was one of my favorite. Yeah, I mean, people were obviously amazing. Really wanted to know about Black Americans, and it's super eye opening. And I was pretty much just hitchhiking around, sort of wandering around for about 5 months. How long have you been there?
Oh wow, that sounds real cool. I appreciate you sharing. It's always interesting to get a chance to hear people that actually got a chance to visit. That sounds really really amazing.
Yeah, I'm sure you meet African friends. I've got African friends, and none of them have seen as many countries as I've seen.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Now for the viewers who may not recognize you, let them know who you are and definitely where you from.
My name is Trey Ellis. I'm a writer, a professor at Columbia University, but I write books and movies and plays and essays. And I'm living in Connecticut now, but I'm from sort of all over. I grew up in Michigan and then in Connecticut and then New York City, and lived in LA
Oh
for a long
wow,
time.
that's really cool. That's real cool. That's real cool. Now I can ask you, when did you develop this passion for writing? Is this something that you were always into as a kid, or did you kind of get into it later in life?
Yeah, I was pretty much always. I mean, I joked that like in about the fifth or sixth grade, I had this. I came across. I just my mom liked to write, but I had this image of a writer being a guy who lived on a boat with a typewriter back then, and having a beautiful wife wearing a bikini who would serve him martinis. I didn't know what a martini was, but it sounded classy, and I just thought that was your life, and not having a boss. And then, but I just always fell into like telling stories, telling jokes. Uh, I just like doing it. So I just always knew that at some point I'd be a writer. But I thought up until really going to college that I would have a regular job, like be an engineer, a physicist, something, like a paycheck, but intellectual, like a fun job, but like always had a steady paycheck. And then, write a book on the side. And then maybe when I retired, publish, something. And then my mom died when I was 16. I just said, you know what? There are no guarantees in life. If I want to be a writer, I should just be a writer. So I entered college and became a English major because I just wanted to force myself to not have a marketable skill.
Wow, that's really inspiring. I mean, it's amazing you be able to, even process that in your mind at such a young age and make it sound so cool, where a lot of people dread writing, and then you ultimately turning it into not just a dream, but accomplishing it and doing well at it. And, like you said, you're a professor, so, you're at the top with it.
Well, it always made me feel. I just always like doing it. So it's something like I tell my students, I tell my friends, I tell myself. Right now, would I do it for free? I like doing things that I do because I like to do them, and then if I get paid for them, then so much the better.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Now I can ask you this. Now, is there a difference in the process or the actual, whether it be creative or the physical process in between, like being a screenwriter or writing a play or writing a novel?
Yeah, I mean the difference is in form more than anything. Most of the writing is thinking, so I'm thinking about the story. Then I kind of think, what's the best form for the story? Since I've worked in all these different forms, I like shifting between sort of tailoring the subject to the form. I think, and a lot of times I'll adapt my own material. I'll write something first as a movie, then I might then I might say, well, is it actually better? We didn't have the success I wanted to have with it, so maybe it would do better as a play, would it do better as a TV show. Um, I think that and depending on what, I like doing things for free, but I also have to get paid. So like, I was developing a movie as a TV show when TV was at peak TV. Now TV is much harder it's much harder to get a yes from TV studios, but maybe from independent films, it's not quite as hard as as TV is now. So then I'm just trying to be flexible.
Oh well, definitely. I appreciate you breaking it down. Now, can I ask you this? Have you or for writers in general, do they run into difficulty? Say like for example, if you do a play about Martin Luther King, or you do a movie about Martin Luther King, or you write a novel about him, like are you restricted creatively, or even do you have to get permission to ask to say certain things, or are you free to, kind of?
Yeah, it depends. If someone's in the public domain, like Martin Luther King, you can do whatever you want because they're a public figure, and you can say this is a work of fiction, but based on this, sort of based on this public figure. Uh, Certainly, if you're trying to get the life rights of somebody, and like in my documentaries about the King in the Wilderness for HBO, uh, that in that case, if you like, let's say you want to get his speeches and you feel like you want to play some of his speeches, you need permission from the family. And the King family is famously, they fight amongst themselves and they fight anybody else. So they've been very guarded. So that's why we don't hear a lot of his speeches, like not his most famous speeches. Some of his other things that are amazing, you don't really hear his voice saying these things like we'd like to, because the rights are hard to get. But when you're writing something fiction about a, a, a public figure, you're pretty free to do whatever you want.
Wow. Okay. Okay. Now we could talk about that a little bit. The documentary King in the Wilderness. Now, what role did you play in that, and what inspired you, and what is it about ultimately?
King of the Wilderness it's an HBO documentary that you can watch online for free. I think on YouTube as well. If you Google King in the Wilderness on YouTube, it's a documentary about the last uh, third of the last couple of years of Dr. King's life after the "I Have a Dream" speech, after his high watermark, all the difficulties he had before he died. And I was brought onto the project. I'd never worked on documentaries before, but I came on as an executive producer, but mainly as an interviewer. So I was the lead interviewer along with the wonderful and legendary Taylor Branch, who's a historian who wrote Eyes on the Prize and these amazing books about the civil rights movement. So for about a year, I went around the country with this crew, and we interviewed the last remaining people that knew Dr. King, and we sat with them for 2 to 4 hours at a time to get some of the last, and some of them sadly have passed away since then, some of the last long form interviews with some of these people. And we put them all together to be this movie about this idea of what would happen if King had lived. Well, he did live much longer than we think, because his last years of the sanitation strike and trying to desegregate housing in Cicero, Illinois, his stance against the Vietnam War, those were all after the height of his popularity, and so the documentary explores the side of him that I think people don't really know about.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think a lot of people take for granted, a lot of the things that he did. They kind of feel like they got him figured out, but you see these documentaries and they tell, I guess a deeper side of him. He was definitely doing some major work that people don't realize that they benefit from. Now,
Yes.
how long did it take? How long did that project take to make?
Well, we were on a bit of a time crunch because we're coming up towards the 50th anniversary of his assassination. So, but it took us, maybe it took us about a year from start to finish. But that was, a lot
Okay.
of work working fast.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Now I wanted to ask you about True Justice. You received the Emmy Award for that. If you could just talk about your role in that and what is that about?
Yeah, one of the Emmys is for True Justice. The other is for King of the Wilderness. True Justice is about Brian Stevenson, the legendary civil rights attorney, death row attorney. You would know from his book Just Mercy and the movie with Jimmy Foxx and Michael B. Jordan. And it's a story of his life. It's a story of his work and a bit of his life. and interspersed with really the history. The most interesting part is like he explains how we got here. He explains the history of the justice system coming from mass incarceration, from slavery to mass incarceration to where we to where we are today. And for that,
Oh,
again, I
okay.
was executive producer. I was really the co-director of it with my friend Chris Schwang, and also the interviewer. So I did all those interviews for that one.
Wow. Okay. Now, this executive producer role, like, what exactly is that in terms of like film? Like, I hear about it like in music, executive producer, but in terms of a film, what does that mean?
Yeah, well, it's kind of, it can be a lot of things. In television, it's the highest, it's the best credit to have in television. Often the showrunner, the writer, the head writer and creator of the show is also an executive producer. Sometimes an executive producer credit is a vanity credit. Just you just you're a movie star and you got your name on it. And sometimes it's because and then in movies, sometimes it's because you just were the first person to buy the material and then or option it, and then you just never lose that credit. Um, but in television, it means you're really doing most of the work and you're really one of the chief people and responsible for the outcome of the story. In movies, it's there's the director and the writer and the producer. The producer itself, the just called the producer, they do actually more work than usually than what's called the executive producer of the story. That's why you'll see a lot of people, well, it might be the director or the writer might also get an executive producer credit.
Okay, okay. I appreciate you breaking that down. Now, I wanted to ask you about the long way around. It's a fiction podcast. What exactly is that? And you could talk about that project a little bit.
Yeah, it was. I never, I'm not. I don't. I didn't really know much about fictional podcasts, but Maria Hinojosa and Latino USA. She's a famous, legendary correspondent for National Public Radio. She has a company, and that does. It's a Pulitzer Prize winning um, radio and podcast company, and she was working with the Kellogg Foundation, and they wanted to do something about the criminal justice system. So together we worked to do a podcast called The Long Way Around. On You can get it on Spotify or any of these places, and also some really cool. I directed some. So I wrote that. I didn't direct that, but I wrote the podcast. So it's 6 episodes, I think a half hour piece, telling the story of a formerly incarcerated black man and his half uh, Vietnamese daughter, and their train trip up north to getting to Minnesota, and then there's an altercation with the police. Um, the No, I'm really proud of it. It was a fun medium to work in. But I also did
Oh, yeah.
on the website there are also these short films, these short animated pieces that sort of uh, illustrate some of the interviews that we talk with people. So I think that it's a really fun, interactive, or multimedia project.
Okay, okay. Now I wanted to ask you about a few films. Some of them I was familiar with back in the days, and then I was doing my research, and I'm like, okay, wow, you was a part of that. If you could talk about the Tuskegee Airmen and what role did you play in that film? That's definitely a classic.
Yeah, I was. I mean, I'd worked on that forever, and I was the screenwriter for that. It got rewritten a little bit after I wrote it, but I'm the main screenwriter for that HBO film, the one with Lawrence Fishburne and Cuba Gooding Jr. And still very proud of that film.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Now I can ask you that, like, when you screenwrite for a film, I mean, I don't know if you are at liberty to talk about it, but are screenwriters involved in any of the production? Are they on the set, or they just kind of write it and they kind of see the movie when it comes out?
It depends on television. You're much more involved in sometimes in movies you can be involved on the set if there's some rewriting, but there's usually less rewriting on feature films. You still can you can visit the set and be on the set, but you're not so integral to it because it's such a big machine that the producer and the director have taken your script and they're making it. Um, TV is faster and it's more of a writer's medium, and there can be some very fast rewriting on the day of, which you try to avoid, but you need to be ready for that. And in television, as I said about being a producer, TV, and TV writers are also producers, so you are on set much more often.
Okay, okay. Now you do plays, the TV, film. Do you have a preference, or do you kind of love them all equally?
I mean, I love them differently. I think that I love that theater's relatively new for me, but theater's is live, and that's super exciting. I worked on a musical, so I started writing music lyrics for the first time. That's really exciting. Um, seeing film just takes a long time, but to see it finally up, where people can see it is exciting. TV is more immediate. That's really fun. Writing books is so personal, and you have such, you have absolute control over everything. So that has its own advantages as well. So I like them all.
Okay, okay. I got to take my hat off to you because that's a lot of talent that you possess to be able to, be good at all of those things. I wanted to ask you about a few more. Let me see the Inkwell. You was a writer for that film as well.
Yeah, I grew up going to Martha's Vineyard, and then so I always had this idea of making this movie. So it was one of the first screenplays that I wrote. I was very proud of it. And I was supposed to direct it, and then that I didn't get to direct it. So Matty Rich, who did Straight Outta Brooklyn, he ended up directing it, and then he also had someone come in and really radically rewrite it. So I was dissatisfied with that movie. So actually, I took my name off. I have a pseudonym on that movie, so I took my name off it. But looking back on it, I don't think it's a good movie, but I think it's the first movie about the black middle class on Martha's Vineyard. So it's just sort of it serves a purpose. And so when I go back to the vineyard now, uh, because of the movie, there are Inkwell T-shirts and bumper stickers and Inkwell everything, but only because of the movie. Before that, it was really just a secret that just the black folks who grew up there knew about.
Okay, okay. I appreciate you sharing that because sometimes, the consumer, we take for granted all of the components that go into making the film, but we really take for granted the person that wrote the film, and we rarely consider, what they were really trying to accomplish, and if, the film accomplished that. Because there was a lot of, like you said, people know that movie, and there was some actors that that we
Yeah.
love
Well,
that was
Jada,
that.
yeah, it's amazing. There are a lot of people that
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
no, it's become like a cult film. A lot of people like it much more than me. But I think that it's not. I think you can't look at it and say it's a good film. It's pretty silly, but it does hold it does talk about a place that's particular and still very important to me.
Okay, okay. Let me see. Okay, now I can ask you about well, let me ask you this. Are you working on anything right now? Do you have anything that may be coming out or just recently that came
Yeah,
out?
I got a couple things. Well, the main thing I've worked last year. I worked on a TV show called Costiera, which is it's an Amazon show starring Jesse Williams from Grey's Anatomy, and he plays a half black, half white, half Italian, half black private detective on the Amalfi Coast in Italy at a five-star hotel. And that was really fun. I spent a lot of time in Italy right after college, and I speak Italian, and I try and I worked for Italian television. So to be back working for television, working for Italian TV again after all these years is exciting, and that's for Amazon, and it's supposed to come out either in February, but there's some talk of them moving it um, to the spring.
Wow, that's real cool. That's
That's
very cool. Yeah, I look forward to that. Now I can
definitely.
ask you about some of the plays. Let me
Yeah,
see.
I love writing plays too. So the first play I wrote was Fly, based on the Airmen, because my friend Ricardo Kahn was commissioned to write a play about the Tuskegee Airmen. I'd written the movie. He asked me if could I consult, and I said, well, I can let me just try to write one. So that was my first play, and it's done really well, and it still continues to be played. It performs around the country. And then I did another play called Satchel Paige and the Kansas City Swing, also with Ricardo Kahn, about the legendary baseball player Satchel Paige, and his, because Jackie Robinson was the first, obviously, to integrate baseball, but Satchel Paige was the best player that's ever been. But he was just older. He was like 47 years old when like young Jackie Robinson moves up to the majors. So he finally gets asked to go to the major leagues himself, to leave the Negro leagues, and he's got to decide, does he want to integrate or keep alive this tradition of the Negro Leagues, which was such a powerful thing that we had in our community, because around the Negro Leagues we had not just the teams that were owned by Black people in general, and then but the restaurants and the boarding houses and all the whole infrastructure around this. The Negro League baseball was really beloved. So it was a fun play to write, and and then I wrote a musical about Dorothy Dandridge, who's a legendary a Black actress, the first Black woman to be nominated for Best Actress for her role in Carmen Jones, the musical. And she was sort of like the Black Marilyn Monroe, had an amazing career as a singer and then as an actor, and then but her high watermark, the biggest thing she did in her life was Carmen Jones. But then after that, Hollywood didn't know what to do with the light skinned, really tremendously beautiful Black woman. And then she kind of she had a little bit of a downward spiral after that.
Okay, okay. Now that's interesting what you were saying about the Negro leagues. Like a lot of people we take for granted, not only did the players get to integrate in the MLB, but like all of the businesses and the hotels and the restaurants and people probably selling merchandise, was probably just a
All that
major
stuff.
loss economically, you know.
Yeah, so that's one of the big themes.
Indeed. And it,
I'm very
mhm.
proud of that play. I think I just did a reading of the play here in my town, in Westport, at a theater here at the big theater in my town, and it reminded me that I think that's a good play, and I wish I'd like to see it performed more often around the country.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. A lot of people they're not familiar with Satchel Paige, and I think he ended up playing for Cleveland. I'm from Cleveland, and
Oh,
Dorothy,
he
you
did,
mentioned
yeah,
Dorothy
yeah,
Dandridge. She was from Cleveland as well.
yeah, yeah. Of course.
Yeah,
Yeah, my
always
my folks were
representing.
actually Dayton from before. That's where my folks were from, Dayton.
Oh, okay. That's cool. That's cool. Okay, let me see. We're about 22 minutes in. I wanted to ask you about maybe some of your novels. I was checking out, let me see. Now bedtime stories, Adventures in the Land of Single Fatherhood. Is that like a children's book or is it for all ages or
No, that's a very adult. It's a creative nonfiction about my life as I was recently divorced. I was divorced and raising two young kids and trying to date at the same time. So my first book was called Platitudes, a novel, and then I wrote Homeward Pairs, a novel based on my own journals from 16 to 30, uh, but fictionalized. And then I wrote a book called Right Here, Right Now, which is about a Black cult leader who he all these people sort of fall under his spell, and he ends up living with them in this. They all live together in this house, and crazy things happen. And then a couple of years ago, then I wrote, then I became single dad and was raising my kids, and I wanted to try my hand at a new form, which is creative nonfiction. So that is like a true story about me, the dissolution of my marriage, and then my dating misadventures. Um, and the book I'm writing now is called Near Cool, and that's actually a novel, but it's also based on a true, real trip I took from a cross country bus trip I took from New York City at the Port Authority bus terminal in 1978, one of the most dangerous places on earth, across country to Los Angeles, up to San Francisco, and then back. But on the way back, I meet this amazing Black artist named Ted Jones, who was a friend of the Beatniks, like Jack Kerouac and all them, and Amir Baraka when he was Lil Ray Jones, all those people. So he just opened my eyes on the bus back, telling me these stories. So that's the frame of this book, this novel, because I talk about my coming of age as an artist, writing like in the do I have this like I did a thing, maybe I can show it to you. I wrote an essay in the right after college called "The Black Aesthetic," and if you see here in this picture, this is all of us in this picture, and there's Chris Rock and Russell Simmons, my friend Vernon Reed, the guitar player next to me. I'm up in the corner where the light ring is, and Reggie Hudlin, George Wolfe, all these amazing artists. I got them all together. Oh, and I'm sorry, it's at Spike Lee's place. So Spike is down there in the front. So So it's about right after college, I fell into all these people. I ran into all these black artists, and I'd written an essay called "The New Black Aesthetic," which I'm very proud of. Which I hope people, and this, if you take most any kind of black African American literature course or cultural studies class in college, you most in many colleges will have you read it still. And I wrote it right after college. So I wrote it in college first, rewrote it after college. So I'm very proud of that. It still has relevance today, and it talks about me, for example, growing up as a black kid from Dayton. We moved to Michigan, and then to I was a faculty brat, so from to U of M to Yale, then to Columbia, in mainly kind of all white worlds. But so I coined a term called the cultural mulatto, where you could be like the way a mixed race person can have a black and white parentage. A cultural mulatto can code shift effortlessly between James Taylor and Joni Mitchell music to P-Funk, and then and you can still be a black artist, but have these be that culturally fluent and have all these influences in your work. So all these people like Spike Lee and Reggie Hudlin and all these people that I was coming up with, and Vernon Reid, his band Living Color was the first black and still probably like the most famous black rock band. Um, so it's about that sort of all of our coming of age in my new book.
Wow, okay, that's phenomenal, man. You named some icons. I appreciate you sharing that picture. That's really, really cool to be in
Yeah,
a space with all those. I guess those are your peers, your friends. You know what I'm
yeah,
saying?
yeah, that was
That's
crazy.
dope. Yeah, yeah. And also,
Yeah, well,
about the book
sorry,
you was writing about fatherhood as well.
sorry, what'd you say? Tell you
Did it
what you
break
say?
up? No, I was saying about the. Can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah.
Can you, Oh, okay. No, I was saying I take my hat off to you about the book you were talking about fatherhood as well. I had looked online, they were saying that black men, they I guess they do more for and with their children than any other group of men in America. But we always get this negative stereotype. So it's
Yeah,
good to hear that
that's
you wrote something like that.
yeah, that's what it's about. But I was going to go back to that. So that in that picture, I'm also my friend Fab Five Freddy's in this picture, and we're working on a TV show now about his friendship with Jean-Michel Basquiat, and how the two of them landed in the art scene in the downtown New York in the '80s, and then obviously Fab was sort of the birth of hip hop and the first VJ for MTV Raps. But before that, he's this a graffiti artist, and working in Basquiat and Keith Haring, where all of the three of them really started this revolution. And for that picture, the new black aesthetic picture, uh, Fab just told me a couple of years ago. I didn't. I thought I knew everything about this picture because I invited all the people to come, but Fab invited Basquiat to come sit in to be in the picture, but he overslept, so he missed it.
Oh man, that's incredible. That's like they say, a picture worth a thousand words. But just to know that, that he invited them and he could have made it. And definitely, Fab Five Freddy is an icon for sure, especially in hip hop.
Yeah,
Art
yeah.
as well. Yeah, no doubt. So yeah, I really appreciate you taking out the time to stop by and come on the platform and talk about the amazing things that you have done. And I definitely look forward to the amazing work that you have to come in the future.
I appreciate it. Tay, it's a and I just the hats off to you. Living in traveling through Africa. I think we talked a bit before when you. I don't know if we were recording then about not enough Black Americans go to like all over Africa besides just going to Goree Island or it's obviously a huge continent with so much going on, but it's just an amazing place. And to be African American and go back there, it's just very very moving. And you know I go back whenever I can.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Because I know a lot of times we think about the west side, but the east side has got some beautiful things to see as well. The south side, like you say, the center, the Congo, all those places. Because,
Yeah, I was
like
in
they say, Africa is the most.
Ethiopia, and also I don't know if
Yeah,
they ask you where you're from, but I look, when even in LA where there are a lot of Ethiopians, people would think that I'm Ethiopian, but there they just all thought that I was from like DC, where there are a lot of Ethiopians, or yeah, they just talked to me in Amharic. And it's like, oh, it was just really, it's fun. Or in Egypt, like with the Nubians in the south. the Egyptians would call me like a Nubian. So it was just very, really wonderful.
Yeah, yeah, that is a great experience when you're in Africa and people, at least for me, when people mistake me for being a local, because you
Yeah,
hear it a lot, like by me traveling to different continents. I mean, different countries. I hear it a lot. But one time I think the lady was from Senegal. I went into a store and she was like, "Oh, you look like my brother," and I'm like, "Oh yeah, yeah, thank you." Then I was about to walk out. I'm thinking she just saying that. She like, "No, hold on, I'm gonna show you a picture of him." And then she pulled out her phone. She went on Facebook. She showed me a picture of him. And usually when people say you look like somebody, you be
yeah.
like, "Nah, I don't look like him." I was like, "Damn, I look like him." And we start cracking up, man. I added him on Facebook and everything. It was
Oh,
real
that's
cool.
amazing. That's so cool.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, thank
But
you for
yeah, I'm
doing
gonna let
this.
you get back to your business.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, yeah. I appreciate you taking the time out. So
All
until
right.
next time.
Yeah.
All right, peace.
Peace.